Welcome to Not Starving Artist, the podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Benson, money coach and equity actor. I am your financial cheerleader, here to help you build your financial confidence and have power over your money. The best part, no budgeting or bi-weekly paychecks required. I went from being a broke BFA grad having weekly panic attacks about money to a financially confident, wealth-building actor and business owner. Money gets to feel fun, simple, and sexy, and I am going to show you how. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited to welcome Maya onto the podcast. She is a past one-on-one client. She is an artist. She is a producer. She is a fantastic human. So before we dive in, I would love her to introduce herself. Maya, tell the people who you are.
Hi, Brooke. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I started my life as an actor. I'm from San Francisco, started in professional theater. And then I went to college and got a BA in acting and marketing. I had always loved marketing and had worked in that a lot in high school, wherever I could, whenever someone would get me a job in high school. And then I kind of transitioned after college and was still acting and was still working and interested in marketing jobs. And I started working in television development and also sort of social media marketing. And then because of that TV development job, that led me to producing. And so now I am a producer and an actor, and I work in marketing and social media sometimes, and I have my own business. So my financial life for this podcast is very complicated and has a lot of different incoming streams. So yeah, Brooke has been my savior, and I'm really happy to be here.
Oh my God, I love it. I can't wait to dive into all of the actual tactical money stuff that we did with all of your different streams of income, interests, incomes, passions, etc. Before we even go there first, I would love to know, how did you know you wanted to be an artist? What was the initial catalyst?
That's such an interesting question. I don't think I chose to be an artist. I think that I was acting at a very young age. And then I started professionally acting on accident almost at age 9. So it really started very early for me. There was just a touring production coming through. And so I auditioned for that and I got it. And then I started, professionally acting. And from that, I got pulled into another production. And then at a very young age, I was working. I was working after school and was working as a professional actor. And then especially in theater, you're doing a lot of shows. You're doing like 4 shows a week. And when you're 12 and you want to hang out with your friends on the weekend and you're doing all of those shows, over time it really got to me. I think one performance I had, we did 60 shows, and that was a lot for me. And I really loved acting, but I told my mom, I want to act, but I don't want to do this many shows. I want to do film. And she was like, good luck. And then I, emailed a bunch of agents in San Francisco, and none of them said yes. And then I found a retired agent at my grandpa's funeral, and he helped me get my first film acting gig, and it kind of just took off from there. So I think
That
that I
is
was,
wild.
yeah, I think I was very determined, and I really knew that I loved performing, uh, but yeah, it kind of just happened. And I think that there's also a lot of artistry and marketing and stuff too. And I credit a lot of that to my parents. I think they were both and the schools that I went to actually both really encouraged creative thinking. And I feel very lucky to have kind of grown up within that environment, because I think that pushed me more towards more creative paths.
Yeah. So what I wanted to ask next, which you already kind of touched on, is how did you allow yourself to get excited or pursue other arenas that were not just art? Because there's a big narrative, right, in the artist world of, if you can do anything else, do it. Like, if you're not 100% actor, you shouldn't be in this business, right? Which is, we know that's
Oh,
bullshit. So what were the thoughts? Was it a family thing of how your family thought about different kinds of incomes and paths, or just marketing felt in alignment? What was that like for you?
I'm so happy you're talking about this, because actually, can I swear?
Are you kidding me? Of course you can. You're
Okay,
on the
cool.
Not Starving Artist podcast, baby.
Okay, amazing. I'll pause and restart.
No, you're
But
good. We are explicit. We are keeping this in. I need the people to know that this money podcast
okay.
is flagged as explicit.
I'm so happy that you brought this up because it fucks me up. This concept of being only able to be a creative, or if you can act then you shouldn't do anything else. Something that really messed me up is people in college would be like, if you have a plan B, then you'll never really do your plan A. That's really hard, and I understand where it comes from because I am fractured. My life is fractured and I do have a lot of different things going on, and it does like take some energy away from other things. But also, as a person, I also have learned that the more that I have going on, the more I can actually really like focus and be dedicated. And I'm still trying to learn how to be disciplined with my brain and learn a system that works well for me. But I quit my job to try to do acting full time, and then I just got another job to fill up that time. So when I just try to do acting, like it's hard to be in a creative pursuit of something, especially like acting, because it's not as tangible. Like you can't really do that much in a day to work on your acting career after a certain point. Like you can submit to the websites and you can do a scene with a friend or go to an acting class, and then you can email some agents if you don't have them. You know what I mean? But there's only so much you can do. So having different things that I'm interested in and things that I do is actually really important for my mental health. And also I don't know, at least for myself, like I have so many different interests and so many different facets of my personality. To not be able to explore those, I think would feel limiting. And I'm always kind of on the hunt for how I can bring all of these things together. And I think the more that I'm experimenting in different career paths, the more I'm looking for those overlaps and kind of figuring out how this might all satisfy my brain.
I am obsessed with that because part of our job as actors is to be well-rounded, versed human beings. And the least interesting people that I have ever met are actors who do nothing but acting, right? Where it's like, you're not out in the world having other experiences. All you can talk about is the acting world. How boring, how
I also
uninteresting.
Oh, girl. I also, no offense, but I really don't have a lot of actor friends. I don't really like hanging out with actors. When I went to like in college, like I maybe have like two friends that I still am in touch with from my BA program. And like one of them changed, like two of them are not even actors anymore. Like yeah, it's hard because I think that there are stereotypes that come along with actors that can be very true. When I did the college application process, I actually got really far along at Juilliard, like to the point where I was sort of deciding whether or not that was something I wanted to pursue and do. Um, and I looked at the schedule for their training schedule, and it was like you're in acting classes from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, and then you have rehearsals, and it was so intensive. And there's a part of that that was so exciting and alluring to me because I was like, oh my God, you're acting all day, and then you're probably going to get so good, and it's freaking Juilliard, like amazing. And then I was like, but that's not life. And right now, as an actor in high school, in that mentality, I was using my life experience to help me act. I mean, that's what I'm basing the heartbreak of my character off of the little heartbreak that I just experienced or whatever it was. And not that by going to Juilliard, I wouldn't be living my life anymore, but I would be limiting the sorts of experiences that I was having in my life in some ways. And I wasn't into that idea. And I really, so that I totally agree that I think that's persisted throughout my life. Like having other jobs, working with kids, all of the things that I do, they give me the stories that I'm writing about that I'm using to fuel my acting and things like that.
Yeah. And the importance of having a full life outside of your acting career. And like, we're talking more than just income streams at this point, which we'll come back to because I think you've done such a fantastic job at getting really curious about what are those streams of income. Don't make that face. We coached on this. We'll come back to that. But it's more than just creating new income streams for yourself as an
Mhm.
actor. It's about having multiple streams of joy and
Yeah.
ways you can get fulfillment out of your life. And if we look at all of the actors who are like crazy successful, even if they were one track actor brained up until they reach stardom, then they start diversifying because they're like, wait, this can't just be it. They start producing, they start, their own businesses, their own product lines. They're going out and having full lives with friends and relationships that like the public eye doesn't see. Like it is always going to be a part of an artistic life. And so you might as well start cultivating that right now rather than trying to like reach some pinnacle and then realizing you have to do that anyway.
I think there's also something so beautiful about what I think you and I are both doing, in that like you were so interested in finance and money, and like that was almost like a passion of yours. And then you were like, and I love this acting thing, and oh my God, look at this giant gap. And now this can help people. And I think for myself too, like working in marketing, working in commercial, like kind of the commercial element of things. Also, I worked in like food for a long time, and now I'm working with kids. Like there's a million different overlaps and gaps, and I start seeing like opportunities all the time where things are missing, And I think that's how we solve problems too in the world. If we're just thinking in the same way that everybody else is, then or having like only one track of thought, then we're not getting to see all the little gaps and overlaps and opportunities that are presented by doing multiple things.
Yes, so brilliant.
Hmm.
So let's shift into money gear now because I want to talk about all of your different income streams, how we organized all of those together, right? Like taking the chaos of freelance and different income sources and making it systemized and making it easy to understand. So before we dive into that, can you talk about what was your catalyst for like, oh, this money thing is important, or like, there's a gap here for me. I want to learn more. I want to get coached on this. What was your catalyst?
Such an important question. The idea of I am bad at money is probably the biggest thing that I got out of you, out of this coaching. I should also say that I found you because you came and spoke at a class in my college.
That's
You
right.
you came in and you presented to a class that I had about the business of acting was the class, and you were talking about you know how to manage your finances as an actor. And it immediately, I was so interested in it because obviously I'd been struggling with it, and I was curious about it, and it was also something that scared me.
Mm.
Finances were one of the reasons I would tell myself I should not be an actor. And honestly, I'm still battling a lot of that dialogue. Like it's hard. It's a really inconsistent path. And I think one thing that you and I have focused on is all these other things that I do can almost like pave the way for me to act. So I don't need to focus on the financial element of acting, but it is hard to be an actor and grapple with the financial reality of that. And it is also hard when you grow up in a family where maybe, like me, there were certain narratives around how we spend money, how we make money, how much money we have. And for me, there was there's always been in my life a big narrative that Maya overspends, that Maya doesn't know how to use money as compared to my siblings and my parents, which is backwards in so many ways if I really was to dig into my family dynamics. But that narrative really messed me up. And it was something that I held with me my whole life. And then I knew and had always known that I wanted to work on my financial life, and I didn't know how. And then you kind of came into my class, and I thought, oh my God, that's so interesting. That could be awesome. And I would ask my dad all the time, can you teach me about finance? And he never would. He said, yeah, I'll teach you how to budget. And I'm like, okay, but I don't know what I'm doing. And I kept bugging him and he wouldn't teach me. And finally I was like, can you help me get a coach or something? Because I can't really afford a coach right now, but I need to figure this out. And you're not helping me. And I'm lost and I don't know how to manage money. And so he helped me get my sessions with you, and it was my Christmas present. It was the best Christmas
That's
present
right. I
ever.
forgot it was your Christmas present. Yes.
Yeah, and it was
That's
the
right.
best Christmas present ever, and it paid itself back a ton. But
Yeah.
it was a big fight to get myself to a point where I could fight for it. And also, I went into coaching essentially because of the negative narratives and almost trauma around how my family talked about me and as a
Yeah.
spender. And that was really, still can be really hard.
Yeah, let's stay here for a second. Can you talk more about what you remember about shifting that identity as like being an overspender to like releasing some of the guilt and shame that was coming from it, realizing some of the thought patterns you had? What comes up for you there?
The first major revelation that I had, is that you would say, spending isn't better than saving and saving isn't better than spending. Like, it's about the balance between it all. And maybe your siblings, even though they're very good at saving money, are not like having the same experiences that you are, that's making your life feel full, or whatever it may be. And there's a million things we talked about in that, but it was more just like, don't judge yourself. Like, you don't know that the alternative is better. And that was so helpful for me to just reset and take away the judgment. And then once that self judgment was sort of put to the side for a minute, and you and I could start to think about, what does the system look like? Then once I could focus on that, like, oh, this is like, if I can just kind of create a system, then I won't need to worry about the judgment, or I won't even have to worry about making judgment calls with my money. It's just going to be something I've already decided. So it's not that I am going to be irresponsible or responsible or whatever. It's just, this is the system that I've created. So it actually kind of takes the emotionality out of pretty much all of it, which I really enjoy. I mean, it is a positive emotional experience to have this system, but it takes away the judgment that's involved a lot of times with spending money.
Wow, what a pitch for the money flow method. I'll tell you what. Can
I
you
will keep pitching
elaborate?
it.
I love that. Can you elaborate a little more? Like when you talk about the system, tell the people how that system has worked for you. And can you explain a little more for you how it's removed that requirement of like self-judgment and assessment and how it's made things easier for you in your financial life?
Yeah. So in the money flow method, you're figuring out your baselines. That's really the number one thing you do. How much am I making? How much am I spending? And you're really like just looking at those numbers straight up, and you're saying, okay, well, I know that I can't really spend more than I'm making. That's really the bottom line, right? And so then we're thinking together, okay, well, shoot, I'm actually spending a little bit more than I'm making, which was the case when I came in. Like, I'm consistently pulling from my savings, which was what was happening every month. And that's what was really stressing me out, was that I really didn't want to keep spending for my savings, but I didn't know how to get my spending down. And I kept thinking, I need to stop spending, and I don't know how to stop spending. And you were like, or you could increase your income. If it seems like you're spending this much every month and it's consistently $200 more, then maybe we just need to find you a way to make $200 more per month. Those are the sorts of things that I wouldn't have even thought about, because I had this trauma of being an overspender. So obviously limiting my spending, holding myself back from spending felt like the solution. And again, a big part of this method is like, do not criticize yourself, do not judge yourself. Like, let's find a way to make the system work. So I have all of these inconsistent streams of income, and they fluctuate all the time. So much of what I do is freelance. So much of what I do, I work with kids a lot, and their schedules change all the time. So from week to week, like, I could not, make as much money as they did. And you would help me think through all the little bits of that piece. Like, okay, well, you're having inconsistent clients. What if they bought a package at the beginning of the month, and you had a cancellation policy? So then you're not, missing as many, or yada, yada, yada. Like, thinking through the logistics of like, how do we make this a little bit more consistent? How do we get these numbers to make sense so that we're even adding a little bit of saving, and we're, not limiting your spending, but increasing and managing the system? I feel like if I really wanted to get into it, I'd have to like really break it down. But I think that's sort of the overarching, little bits and pieces. Like, there's so many parts of your financial system, and it's about thinking with an open mind about, how can I tweak all of these things to work for me? And
Mhm.
me at the center is me feeling good and feeling like I have excess and savings and things that I can want and hope for and have.
Yeah. Because what I remember for you, and this is where like spending gets such a bad rap, gets pegged as the
Yes.
problem child so much, when really spending, there's so many other levers you could pull to make your money look how you want to look. That isn't just spend less, spend less, spend less, spend as little as possible. So I
Yeah.
remember when we were talking about this, we did a spending audit for you, right? Where we like
Hmm.
looked through all of your spending. What do you remember from the spending audit?
Oh, it was so scary. It was
Why?
so scary to look at that number and realize, oh my God, I'm spending this much per month. And in my head, I knew I wasn't making that amount. So that was also scary. But also seeing my emotional spending patterns of like, I'm just going to offer to put dinner on my card and all these things. I had so much guilt around every time I did that. I knew that wasn't the financial decision I should probably be doing. And I just had so much guilt, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to fix it. So just looking at a sheet of paper with everything I'm spending and all of these choices I'm making that are kind of from like emotional trauma or whatever it was, and then how much I'm making, like that, and seeing the difference between those two numbers, it was overwhelming. But it's a great place to start because, well, especially when I'm working with someone like you who can immediately be like, okay, don't freak out. Now we're going to figure it out. But before, just to see those numbers was daunting. And if somebody's listening to this podcast who doesn't have a coach and you're just at that phase where you're looking at the numbers and you're freaking out, like that's okay. Don't give up hope, because that really is a crucial and big step. And it's a really hard one, especially if you have as much emotional stuff in it like I did.
For sure. Like awareness, this is why I actually think people jump to budgeting before they even go to awareness, because awareness is harder than putting a
Mm-hmm.
spreadsheet and deciding like what numbers would be perfect to make sense of how I want my money to look, rather than doing the harder emotional work that is actually going to have a bigger difference, where you are aware, you feel the feelings, right? Because at the end of the day, that's all it is, right? You're just afraid of feeling a feeling, right? So if you allow yourself to feel the feelings, it's going to do the work of what you want a budget to do. Where for you, that the stuff you didn't care about like started to immediately fall away, right? 'Cause you're like, I don't want to keep seeing that. It's not like you had to like willpower yourself to stop spending on that stuff, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. My therapist always says your brain just loves arriving somewhere. And I will sometimes just like catastrophize or whatever just so I arrive somewhere. And like I think that
Nugget of
this
therapy for anyone who needed it.
I our brains just love having a solution, and that's exactly what you're saying. Like to make a budget or to try, and I did everything. I did the Rocket Money. I tried creating budgets. I did all of this. Like that's what was so hard, is that I would try these systems, but I didn't understand. Like you were saying, I didn't really have an awareness of what was going on, and I knew that there was some emotionality involved, but I didn't know what to do with it. And I think I felt very lost. And it wasn't until I sort of got introduced, this really sounds like an ad, but introduced to the money flow method, that I was that I was like, oh my God, there's a system that I don't need to, freak out about.
Yeah. So when we did the spending audit, right? That the spending that didn't really contribute to your life, right? That you weren't feeling great about started to fall away. But what I
Hmm.
remember is there was you had a lot of feelings about how much you were eating out and how much you were spending on food,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
one of the things that we discovered, right, is you were feeling really guilty and bad about the food spending. But when we looked at your lifestyle and what your literal day-to-day life required, it was pretty hard to actually get that number down. So instead of continuing to feel bad about it and deciding like, well, I'm just going to try and spend as little as possible, I'm going to try and eat out less, we crafted your money plan around that being part of your life. So you didn't have to feel shitty about it continuing. What comes up for you when I say that?
It's still something that occasionally my brain loves to be like, but what if we just got groceries and cooked more? And then I'll do that. And then I'll just spend $120 on groceries and I won't be home to cook them. And it's like, why did I do that? So, yeah, sometimes you have to get real with yourself. And I had to. That was a big aha of like, I'm not going to spend less on food. this is how much I spend. And you and I also went through like, yes, there also could maybe be a little bit of saving if I picked up the food rather than had it delivered or whatever it was. And those little changes also aren't as stressful and they can just be like in the back of my head. And sometimes I will want it delivered or that will make the most sense for my night. And I will know that that's something that I am spending. And again, my baseline number of how much I was spending on food every month didn't really change. And I know like I don't really care about buying clothes that much. So I care more about food than having a part of my budget be set aside for clothes. Like, that's not what I care about. But now that I have savings, I can also budget in, I have clothes money is one of my buckets, and that's also really exciting.
That's so fun. Okay, we're gonna come back to buckets.
Yeah.
What I
I
wanna, what
love
you
buckets.
we love buckets. We love Ally, right? Not sponsored, but Ally
Love
has buckets.
ally.
That's what we're talking about. When I want to touch on what you said, which was like, even if I'm gonna eat out, maybe I don't get it delivered, or maybe I go to a place that isn't as expensive. Maybe I don't get drinks at this dinner out, right? And so it's about pulling out of the all or nothing headspace, right?
Yeah.
Where I think our brains love all or nothing, right? Because it feels so good when we're in the all. It feels so good when we're doing everything right and everything perfect. And with food specifically, I see this like spectrum where we're oscillating between the far ends, where it's I'm kind of eating out, YOLO, fuck it, getting drinks, doesn't matter, kind of not thinking about money, or I need to get my shit together. I'm going to be cooking and meal prepping and like getting healthy, and like
A
there's
hundred
no
percent.
room in the middle for like
Yeah.
what life actually looks like, where it's like,
Yeah.
what if instead of getting DoorDash 5 nights a week, I do it 2 nights a week? And instead of meal prepping my ass off, what if I just get like a frozen bag of pasta that I can heat up in the microwave versus getting DoorDash rather than like going all the way to the extreme?
That really exists with everything. It exists with so much of how I just structure my life. Like, am I, you know, I like even sometimes I'll like spend too much. I would have spent too much in a month and been like, well, fuck it. Now I spent too much money. I'm just going to spend even more money. Like, there's a weird self-sabotageness that can happen with that all or nothing mentality of like, oh, I already bought this dinner's already $150. Might as well be 200. I don't know where that comes from in my brain, but that would happen to me where I think I just felt so much guilt and I didn't know what to do with it. And and so I would just be like, well, I'm self-sabotaging now, you know? And yeah, it's crazy. One thing that was my biggest takeaway from starting to work with you is, oh my God, money is so emotional. I
Say
thought
it
that you
louder. Say it louder.
Money is so emotional. I thought that I was going to come into coaching with you and we were going to figure out a system and I was going to be out of there. And we would spend so many sessions just talking about my dad or my mom or my grandparents, how they thought about money, the side comments that were told to me when I was 12 that are still affecting me, how much guilt and shame and overwhelm. I mean, I had a horribly hard time switching banks. That was a big thing you and I debated. I was like, I have an emotional connection to this bank, which like who would have thought? But it was because my parents had always used that bank and I just felt scared to leave it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so glad you said that. What's one of the biggest things that you noticed as like an emotional thing that was happening in your brain that directly affected a tactical thing that was happening with your money? So like one of the things you just mentioned was being at a bank that wasn't serving you as well as it could anymore, right? Like that was a tactical thing. What's something else that comes to mind?
Saving isn't king. I think that I in my head I thought if I can just save, 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 then I'll be fine. But then you were like, but what are you saving for? And that became like a tactical thing that freed me a lot. Like this idea of savings was so emotional because my brother and sister had more savings that they were able to live off of. But you know, with my own personal financial situation, like I needed a structure to know like what am I saving for? Where is this going? What do I want the savings to do in order to make me excited about it? And I didn't know. So then by it becoming more tactical for me, it became less emotional and therefore actually drew me even closer towards it, where before I was just scared of it and overwhelmed by it and running away from it. Savings was a
Yeah.
big one for me.
I love that. So savings isn't king. And also talk about your savings because you are saving money, right? Talk about the buckets. Go for it.
Yeah, I think also it's okay that I'm not always saving money. Sometimes I have months where I'm not. And
Spending seasons,
I
baby. Yes.
Yeah, and I even over the past few months, like I quit my job in April, and not always having a month where I'm saving, but then I'll book an extra project and I'll get that extra check, and it's like, heck yes, that goes right into my clothes budget or my travel budget or whatever, my bucket, not budget, my travel bucket or whatever, and it feels so awesome, and it's okay, and I don't freak out if I'm not putting money in my buckets because I know that I'll be okay. So
Mhm.
it's just a positive and not a negative if I'm not saving. But yeah, it's really there are seasons and things fluctuate and that's okay. And you're learning how to have this system that carries with you through the good times and the bad times, the hard times and the easy times, and that's what it's
Yeah.
for.
Let's talk about your fluctuation because
Hmm.
we're talking about the system. We're
It's a
talking about
lot.
yes,
That's
we're talking about
that
saving.
is like the cornerstone of my experience of the money flow method is fluctuation as a word.
Yes, tell us more.
I mean, my income fluctuates, my spending fluctuates. I mean, life fluctuates. Emotionally, we all fluctuate. And you're saving, how much you're spending. And really, what I love about the money flow method is that it's designed to give you a cushion and it's designed to give you a structure that a fluctuation can happen around. But that is your consistent sort of lighthouse that's always going to be there that will catch you if you fall and whatever. But fluctuation is all of it. And I think that money comes with this idea of there is no fluctuation and it's ordered. I spend this much, I make this much, I save this much. I put this amount in an account every month and it grows this much. I mean, it's all numbers and percentages and growth and consistency, but it's not. Money is emotional, it is fluctuating, it is inconsistent, and learning how to work with that was huge.
Yeah. What's the, because you touched on the tactical side of how, like, tactically you can manage fluctuating income, right? And make it feel less of a roller coaster in your body and in your brain. But there's also a
Mm-hmm.
mental side, especially as an artist, right? Being consistent income and consistency is often painted as like the mecca of the thing you should want. And like, if you could get as consistent as possible. And the reason it's so hard to be an artist is because things are fluctuating, which isn't the case. Like, the fluctuation isn't the problem, but our brains have such a hard time like believing that
Yeah.
fluctuation is okay, especially when you're in a low month. So can you talk
Yeah.
about some of the like mental things that you were working through or like epiphanies you had in the fluctuation space?
I'm going to be honest. This is a hard part. The low fluctuation months when I do have a low month and I'm not saving and whatever, like, even though I know I'm going to be okay and it's much less emotional, it's okay to be like, oh, that's a little scary. I'm having a really low month. And I now have a system that supports me when I have those months. So it's less daunting, but it
Mhm.
can be like, oh my God, it's been 2 months or 3 months and I haven't made as much money. And I think what has been a real epiphany is that you have taught me such a problem solver mindset when it comes to that of, are there ways that I can change this that's not just spending less, Like, okay, I love my apartment. I don't want to move. That's not even going to be in the cards for me. I need X amount more money this month. And that's where for me, having multiple streams of income has been huge. Like, all of my stuff fluctuates, but it fluctuates in different ways. And usually one thing will come in and help me when something else isn't. When acting isn't paying, then producing is. When producing isn't paying, then you know, focusing on my girls will, and all these things. I should clarify when I say focusing on my girls and the kids that I work with, I do counseling for kids.
This
Yeah,
is like the business that you
might
run,
sound
that
weird.
you own, which is
Mm-hmm.
part of what we worked on, is making that business more financially viable. But it was that was a piece of it, but it was more about getting it more consistent in the way of you were having to manage it less. It was taking less time on like the admin side so that you could spend more time inside of your art, pursuing other paths, because this isn't a business that you currently want to scale. So can you talk a little bit more about what you remember working on when it came to like business and even other streams of income or other work areas?
I think that it was more that I had more control, more of the emotional side of like, I have control over how I want to structure this business, or I have control over how much I want to freelance social media or how much I'm charging. I have control over, how much time and energy I'm putting into producing. When I started producing, it was also like, I know I'm going to take a hit because I have to learn more skills right now. And I'm not going to be able to put my time and energy on something like acting or something like peer counseling. So I'm gonna shift and I'm gonna plan for that. And, so I don't know if that answers your question, but
Mhm.
uh, the strategy around how I was managing all of those things felt much more open and available to me. Where before I felt limited by it, now I felt like it was all tools, just all tools in this big machine that I was creating.
Yeah. And to go all the way back to when we were talking about spending and your spending audit, and then realizing like there are some things that with your current lifestyle just like can't be changed. Or if they could, it would like cause a really drastic lifestyle shift or hit.
Yeah.
And so at that point, it's like, great, let's pull another lever to solve the problem of not having wiggle room, which is making more. So let's look at your current business. How can we monetize that more? Okay, if that's not moving the needle, what's the next avenue? Yeah, what's coming up?
And sometimes you feel like you can't pull that lever, and that's also hard. Like, oh, I can't make more money with social media consultancy. And again, that's like where your brain has taught me so much about like, but what if you could? Like
Mm-hmm.
that is the energy and the spirit with which I approach my financial life now. Like, but what if we could make it work? And that is how you have approached it too. And I think that that's really the baseline of what you do is like, okay, we are acting, it's inconsistent. This is a horrible career to financially depend on. Like, what if we made it work? And how are we going to do that? And what other things do I like? And, whether that's working at a restaurant, which is awesome, and, or whatever it is, like, is that what's going to help me? Or do I want to take more of a gamble and go down this other thing that I'm interested in? And again, like sometimes it will be hard. Like I'll get a new job and it will take up so much of my time and I'll be like, fuck, where did acting go? And now I have this money, but now I lost the thing I love. And so you reorient and then you lose money and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, we're figuring it
Mm-hmm.
out as we go.
For sure.
Yeah.
Something I want to clock here too is as we're talking about like doing other things besides acting. One, what we've been saying, which is like it doesn't make you less of an artist, right? To pursue other
No.
things. And also the nuggets that you of curiosity and excitement that you are pursuing could also lead to more acting jobs or like will add to your life in ways you couldn't have even imagined. So I'm going to ask you for an example of this in a minute, Maya, but I'm going to share an example from my life, which is I love Jimmy Buffett, for those of you who don't know. Like, I'm a Margaritaville girly. And so, in that just passion and obsession, I was like working for them as a brand ambassador. And it's what brought me down to Florida, where I was an acting apprentice, which then led to multiple equity house contracts while I was non-union. And how I got my equity card is because I loved Jimmy Buffett and the beach. And that took me to Florida, which is then how I got my equity card, which is like such a bizarre way that my worlds crossed over. But like following your excitement and your desire in these other career paths
Hmm.
can also impact your artistry and your artistic career path. Is there something that comes to mind for you of like an example of when that happened?
It happens every day for me. I mean, I like, for example, I'll have this is like crazy, but so I was interested in marketing, for example. And at one point I was working at a makeup company and I was helping them. And I was trying to figure out this campaign around these makeups, and they were kind of being targeted towards teenage girls. That's a really big category of spenders for makeup. And then I was meeting with my peer counseling clients, and they were talking about their insecurities, and they were talking to me about makeup a little bit. And I was like, oh my God, I'm using this in the campaign. And also, oh my God, I feel so bad. Like, so many makeup marketing campaigns are making these girls feel insecure. How can we sort of embrace that and blah, blah, blah. And that led me to a really cool and successful campaign, you know? And then with the writing, a lot of times I will be like, you know, looking at what people are interested in around the country in terms of the statistics or what people are watching on social media or whatever. And I'll get an idea for a script, or I'll be talking to my peer counseling girl and they'll be talking about an emotional issue. And I'm like, that's exactly what the character would be going through. Or I will use some of the things that I, you know, am talking about in my sessions with the girls that I counsel, and that will be brought into the scene that I'm acting in. And I'll bring in the empathy that I have towards them, or oh, I remember what it was like to be 13 and have that feeling. And now it's this feeling, and I'm going to show that on screen. So it's all interconnected and following. And I think for me too, like I am doing marketing, I am doing social media, I am doing therapy essentially, I'm doing producing, I'm doing acting, like all of the things. And I've done so many other things. I've worked in restaurants, whatever, but all of those things, like I said, are different parts of who I am, how my brain works, what I'm excited about. And they always feed each other. And, you know, a lot of times I'll get stressed and I'll tell my coach, like, I'm really stressed that I'm not focusing on acting as much right now. And she'll say, all the other things you're doing are making you the actor that you are. Like, by focusing on producing, that will pay off in acting. By focusing on social media, that will pay off in acting. By, you know, so by focusing on counseling, it will pay off in acting. So they all feed each other. And whether you're working at a restaurant or you're a dog walker or you're making paintings or you love Jimmy Buffett, it will all, you know, pay off.
Such a beautiful depiction, right? Of like why that phrase is bullshit of like if you could do anything else, do that. Like being just an actor is the worst thing you could do for your acting career, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
focusing on all of it, joy wise, income wise, etc. Which again, I think you are allowing yourself to follow so many curiosities and desires, and just even like curiosities about like I don't love this thing, but maybe it could make me money. Like that's still valid. So I think you're doing such a
And
fantastic job.
and that will change too. Like there's a lot of times where I'm like, I wish I didn't have to be doing social media coaching right now. I'm not feeling excited by it, but it's making me money and all
Mhm.
these things. But again, when you have sort of a curious approach to your money flow and you're like, okay, well, this is helping me do these other things or whatever it is, then it becomes, you know, but it's a constant shift. It's a constant negotiation for me. Every CEO party, I'm like, okay, how are we going to figure this out? This didn't feel as
Mhm.
good this month, and this did. And how are we going to tweak this? And it changes all the time.
Yeah, which even just that, the neutrality of how you just said that phrase of like during my CEO party, yeah, I'm thinking about this, how am I going to tweak this, how am I going to solve this problem? Like that is such a different brain than the brain that I met at the
Oh,
beginning
yeah.
of this year. What do you, if you could put yourself at the beginning of this year, like what were the thoughts that were going through your head?
Oh my God, I don't even know. There's so many. They were negative. I mean, it was like, I'm not going to make money. I'm not going to have savings. I'm not going to be able to support a family. I'm not going to be able to ever afford the clothes that I want or the life that I want. I'm not going to be able, I mean, all of the knots, you know, all of the things of getting in my way. And like I said before, like I still struggle with these. It's normal. Everyone has that. But when you have a system, it feels a little less. I mean, it's like if you were like, I don't make money and then you get a job, you're like, I'm still stressed about making money sometimes, but like I have money. So, you know, there's once you have something that's helping you and in a structure to work within, then it's a little bit less daunting.
Yeah, it's like giving you the what I see coaching as is it's giving you not just the infrastructure to actually manage your money when it fluctuates, like the very tactical nature of it, but then giving you tools to navigate your brain around money for the rest of your life. Like you don't just magically stop feeling money scarcity when you have money in the bank. Like that's not how it
Yes,
works. Just like
exactly.
when you start going to therapy and you are talking to your therapist about like why you don't need to feel anxious about this certain scenario, it's not like, oh, anxiety is cured, right? Like that's not how this works. But you continue to build your tools and get more used to moving through your anxiety or moving through your scarcity or moving through different thoughts. So it becomes so much easier of a process. So stressors are less triggering. Like that's the work that you're doing on the mental
Are
and emotional side.
do you still have money scarcity?
Oh, for sure. It pops up all the time. And that's like, I'm so glad you asked that because I being an artist, I feel like every single artist, you're never not going to have the deeply worn path that comes from
Mm,
a college or just a lifetime of being told your stomach will be empty, or your stomach will be empty but your soul will be full, right? Or like
hmm.
you're going to have a rich fulfilling career but you're going to have to live in poverty. Like that pathway has been worn 1,012 times from growing up wanting to be an artist. And so it's like a river, right? Like once a river is worn, the actual riverbed doesn't go away, right? It's still, you can still see it. So falling into that riverbed sometimes still happens. But what I've done in my riverbed is I have a ladder every 2 feet to help me get out. So I will have a moment of scarcity and I'll be like, right? Like old narratives will come back. And then I have so many tools, so much evidence of how that's not true. I go through all the mindset exercises. I teach you guys, I teach my clients, right? Where then I can easily pull myself out.
Mm. It's so it's so helpful to hear everything you're saying. And I also think it's important to say, like, as an actor, there's a large part of you. And also, like, I know my sister is working with you or starting to work with you, and she is not an actor, right? So this is not just for artists, but I think that as an actor, a lot of times you also feel like if I do something else, I'm giving up. Or, and like you have a whole other career and job that maybe is actually your main job and the main thing you're spending your time on. But that doesn't mean that you're not a creative and that you are not an actor. I haven't worked professionally as an actor. Actually, that's not true. In like a little bit now, but I've done smaller projects, but no like big projects, no big
Mhm.
blockbuster movies. And that doesn't make me any less of an actor. So it or any less of a creative. Like you could switch entire career paths. I have friends that still dream about being an actor but work in a different field, and they still are creatives and are artists and in their own way. So you're never, things change in our lives, but it doesn't mean we've lost or given up or,
Right.
we're just making
Right.
it work. We're making it work.
Yes. And being a full-time artist isn't about the percentage of income that you make from your art. It's about, are you able to devote the amount of time that you desire to devote to your art, which is never going to
Mm-hmm.
be 40 hours a week, right? You can't
Mm-mm.
devote 40 hours a week to your art. That's just not how artists work, right? Like we have to go and do other things. So just like you said, right? Like you could have a whole other career path. You literally experienced this. I literally have a whole ass career in business that is not acting, that takes me 25 hours a week. And the rest of the time, I'm in my art. I do not want for time to go to auditions to work on my art. I can take time off to do gigs, right? But I'm going to tell you right now, the balance of how much money I make from this business and acting, drastically different, right? But it doesn't make me any less of an actor and an artist, because who knows, those skills could tip 10 years down the road. Again, who knows? But being a full-time artist is what you decide it means.
Love that.
This was such a fantastic conversation. Is there anything we haven't talked about yet that you're like, I need to say this before this interview is over? Something you experienced, an epiphany you had, something you want to say to the people?
I think I want to speak on judgment a little bit. I think there is so much when you're at this age that I am, I'm 25, when you're at this career, when you're starting to figure it out, there is so much self-judgment, there's so much judging other people. Everybody I know is scared and doesn't know if they're on the right path. I mean, my boyfriend works at Goldman Sachs and he has no idea what he's doing with money. You know what I mean? Like he does, but he doesn't. And we're all there's this great quote by Anne Lamott that's something like we're all clingy and messed up and broken, even the people who seem to have it more or less together. And we are. And especially when it comes to money, like you, Brooke, are still working with it, and I'm still working with it. When it comes to my acting career and what I'm doing with my life, I have all these things that I love, but I don't have it figured out. Like I'm still trying to figure it out. And judging yourself, comparing yourself to other people. Obviously, this is more of like a general principle, but we're here and we're talking about how good our money lives are and how much we figured it out. And we're still working with it. And it's okay if you're still struggling or still working with it, or you don't know what you're going to do with your life. You don't want to give up this thing that isn't making you a lot of money to spend more time on something else. Like if that feels too hard, like we don't judge you. We don't blame you. And I think you've really created that space for me to explore these topics in a non-judgmental setting. And I really appreciate that.
That is so beautiful. Thank you, Maya. I'm so glad you said that. If people want to find you and follow along, where can they find you?
I should be so much better at this, and I will work on that. I have so many things that I need to promote and get out there, and I have not built that structure, but I'm working on it. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's Maya and then the word donut and then the letter O. So Maya Donut O. Or you can find me on my website at mayadonato.com, and that will show you some of the stuff that I'm working on, but not all of it because I have so many different facets of my life that aren't on that website. So I'll work on that system. But until then, if you want to connect with me, just DM me or reach out to me on Instagram.
So great. Thank you so much for coming on, Maya.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be on here. Cheers to the money flow method, guys. Woohoo.
Oh, fuck yes. And that's where we'll end. Thanks so much for tuning in. Come join me on Instagram for more on how to build a simple, sexy relationship with your money. My Instagram handle is @NotStarvingArtists. And if you want to dive deeper with me, head to the show notes to learn more about one-on-one coaching. If you love this episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend that you want to get rich with.